Greetings, fellow travelers, and welcome to the Way of the Showman, where we view the world through the lens of showmanship. I am Captain Frodo, and I will be your host and your guide along the way. And today we are meeting a new voice on the Way of the Showman, one that I have walked with for quite some time. I started out as a magician, as an assistant and a performer in my dad's magic show, and as I became a teenager and became interested in more stronger expressions, if you want to call it that, I became aware of the freaks and the geeks and all of the strange stuff of the world of the sideshow. And the only performer that I knew of in Norway that did this kind of stuff, that I met soon after coming to Oslo for the very first time, was an extraordinary performer and human being. Håvve is his name, and he was known as the Headmaster of Pain and always as the mastermind and motor behind a group called Pain Solution. Pain Solution has been keeping it real since 1993, but a couple of years ago, it was maybe a little more now actually, maybe it was just after the pandemic, and that Håvve has retired from the sideshow performance field, which makes it an interesting thing to explore, because I am in the middle of it and I can't see any end to it. And although we don't particularly talk about how he decided to end his career and what the steps and big ideas were for that, but because we didn't get that far, there is an interesting thing for me, because he was such a big inspiration for me to finding my way into this more alternative stuff. He was somebody who was ahead of me. As we talk about, we had an intimate relationship with him piercing my nipples back in 1993. So the same year that he officially started his company, we had a very intimate connection, and it rolled on from there. So in this first episode, we explore the earliest origins of what became the Pain Solution company, and which was a really big deal in Norway. And Håvve has done so many different things, from real just modern primitive style performances with all these kinds of the arts of the fakir, with any kind of pain withstanding and all the expressions of the sideshow, really. But it's also entered into full kind of performance art, which is also just great. He's written books, and it's a real pleasure to have him here on the podcast. And as a starter, we're going to have these 2 episodes, and then I'm going to have him back to talk a little bit more about the grand scope of things, because we just couldn't get through it all. So without further ado, let's hear the voice of Håvve, the Headmaster of Pain. But before that, just click like and subscribe. I always forget to say this, and normally I don't care, but today I'm going to say it. Why not follow this podcast wherever it is that you've downloaded this thing? It means so much to me. So click follow, maybe find us on Instagram as The Way of the Showman, and follow us there. Then you'll see what's happening. Here is the conversation with Håvve. You are the heart and soul of Pain Solution.
Yeah.
That for a big part of your life, that was how I knew you. So how about you? How are you? Just to start this off somehow.
Well, I'm good for the most part. After my career as a fakir and fire breather, I have developed what's called an eosinophilic asthma. And I call it like the fire breather's asthma, because it's not allergy triggered. It's not the mainstream asthma that the general population will struggle with, but long-term exposure to fumes and chemicals have scarred my lungs. So I'm like now chronically ill.
It's an occupational hazard, basically.
Yeah, it's not uncommon. So This could also be a warning to aspiring fire eaters to be cautious.
Yeah, I mean, I remember I read in a little booklet when I was, I can't remember, some fire booklet thing that I got through some magic. Magic is big on creating, the magic community is big on creating kind of books and booklets and and it was about fire breathing. And I remember being outside in the garden pouring petrol out of my dad's lawnmower because it was the only way I thought I could get some kind of fuel. And so all of my initial, that was for fire eating though, but still now I'm like, it's an idiotic, like 98 octane. They had octane back then, I think.
Yeah.
So like with petrol, terrible idea.
Yeah, terrible.
Yeah.
Of course, in the early days, I would also use whatever I could come across. Actually, until I don't know, when was it? I think around late 90s, I came across like specialized fire breather fuel, which was said to contain only 0.1 health, what's it called?
Pollutants, whatever.
Less poisonous than the average kerosene or lamp oil or
Yeah.
No, it's dangerous stuff.
It is. I mean, because for as much as you clean the lamp oil, you're still putting some kind of petroleum-based thing into your mouth. And as much as you think, yeah, but you're just breathing it out, we know that if you put a tablet under your tongue or you put something into your mouth, it dissolves and gets sucked up anyway. So that it's not so awesome for your health. I don't know if it's hard to get around that, even though at the time I probably told myself that it was totally fine.
Yeah. I kind of knew. I had an accident pretty early on in '94 where I accidentally inhaled a mouthful of lamp oil. Maybe it was paraffin even back then, which is even worse, which led to a chemical pneumonia and landed me in hospital for 10 days.
Wow.
With massive doses of antibiotics and and also had like a conventional pneumonia.
Layman's pneumonia.
But, like a year later, but that wasn't diagnosed correctly, so it developed into a massive infection. I was hospitalized, and I was like basically drowning within myself.
Wow.
Because the long sac, the pneumo that encapsulates the lung was so filled with pus.
Wow.
Yeah.
So drowning.
Yeah. So I was there was no room for the lung to expand, and they extracted like 6 liters of pus.
Oh, jeepers.
Yeah, it almost killed me.
Rough. Well, I am very, very glad that it didn't. And one of the things that sort of there's many reasons why I want to talk to you, because but one of them being that you have sort of, based on all kinds of reasons, you claim you have fully retired from the Fakir and sideshow freak show business.
Yeah, I retired from the business in terms that I'm not performing anymore.
Yeah.
At all. But I don't think, I'm still a fakir, and I'm not sure if I would be able to cope with all the chronic pains that I have in my body now if it wasn't for my background.
Yeah.
And also, if it wasn't for my background, I probably wouldn't have half of the ailments that I too struggle with on a daily basis now.
That is super interesting. So that is a great trigger to go from my question about the end to the question about the beginning. So you have a lifelong relationship to pain, self-inflicted pain, and now I guess it's, I mean, some of these chronic pains might be semi-self-inflicted too, even if it wasn't voluntary. But anyway, like regardless, I sidetracked. Like, tell me a little bit about how you discovered this, and because you've constantly been pushing the boundaries of the human body. For it first, and when I heard about you, it was kind of through myths and stories that I don't know whether they're real, and then through knowing you or whatever, knowing that you were always pushing it and going into other directions. So how did this start, this relationship with pain and body exploration?
No, it started at a young age. Like I don't have much memory of my childhood, other than I was like accident prone, active child, careless, excited by fire, always playing with fire, and I did get burnt, and it didn't scare me away from playing with fire even more. And bruises and cuts and all sorts of, that's normal among kids. But I was curious about the sensation, the pain, and to also follow a cut from it was fresh till it healed up completely and made a scar, and how the scar faded over time. And then in my early teens, I started like deliberately cutting, burning, poking myself. At school, when we had like arts and crafts and we were sewing something, I would like be pushing needles into my thigh instead of doing whatever we were supposed to do. One time we were doing woodwork, and I was trying to get my teacher's attention, but he was just keen to help the cute girls and like leave us boys to it. So at some point I cut myself on purpose and like raised my hand and said, "Hey, teacher, wait," and they're like, find something. But teacher, he's bleeding. And I was like, yeah. And I had to go to the ER and get some stitches.
Wow.
And like just doing that to spite him, it was. Yeah. So I developed this curiosity for to explore the sensation of pain and inflict it upon myself, and see, always pushing to increase my threshold. I got a hold of some shotgun shells, and I opened them and took out the powder, and would put the powder on my hand, on my arm and on my hand, and set it on fire for the sensation, for the rush. Because once it starts burning, you can't put it out until it's all gone.
Wow.
Yeah, it was my idea of pastime. And of course, like if my family and my friends and teachers, like nobody really could understand. And I also didn't have a vocabulary to explain. And back then it wasn't so much focus on self-harm among youth. But that was basically what I was treated as. They never sent me to see a psychologist or a shrink or anything. It was just, no, you have to stop harming yourself. And I was like, yeah, but so I started doing it like more concealed.
Interesting, but with sometimes, because I'm sure there's different types of self-harm. You have always struck me as having, I don't know, it sounds a little bit, maybe it's doesn't hang up, but that you got a healthy relationship towards the exploration to pain. Even that thing that you say that you'd make a cut, and then over time pay attention to it, so that the pain itself could, they're going, what is it that happens, and study it over time. This is very different from I cut myself to see if I can feel, or I'm everything around me is so terrible that I have to transform my psychic pain into real pain or into physical pain. But I didn't ever get the feeling that you were struggling mentally and cut yourself out of some sort of desperation.
No, that wasn't the driving force. And whether or not I had some mental issues as a kid, maybe I did, maybe I didn't. But that wasn't the driving force. It was I was curious and discovered that I had a knack for it. I had a knack for it. I could take quite a bit of pain. And unconsciously I developed, skills and tolerance. And in my teens, it kind of escalated, I meet old friends. I remember first time I met you, and you were there eating glass at the party, and I was like, maybe I was. I probably can't remember, but yeah, there was a period, if I was on the beach and I found a shell, like a seashell with a sharp edge, I would like test its cutting ability on my skin. If I found broken glass, I would always, pick it up and save a chart for, experimenting. They're exploring different edges, a sharp stone, all kinds of needles. I would like test out and see how far I could push them into my skin. Yeah.
But you said that you then, through the feedback of the world or whatever, made it into a private thing. So this must have been very early 90s, because at some time in the mid 90s, or when was it you started to actually do stuff?
Actually,
do stuff publicly was what the question was.
Yeah.
Like, how was that transition?
So my conscious journey started like 89, I think. It was. Yeah. I was given a book by a friend, The Modern Primitives, which is to so many people been a revelation.
Yeah.
But for me, it was in particular the chapter, the big interview with Fakir Musafar.
Yeah.
And when he was talking about the outer body experiences, the altered states of mind, all kinds of, and I was already like fascinated with different cultures and their way of adorning the body with tattoos, scars, and piercings. So of course that was a parallel interest that developed. But yeah, he would explain like the driving force for him, to seek an altered state of mind. And then something clicked in my brain and say, yeah, okay, so maybe that's it. I'm a fakir. I am, my purpose in life is to go down this road and explore this. And then I got more of a direction to my self-harm practice,
Also places it into a context that maybe when you do these kind of explorations yourself and people go, what are you doing? And the genuine answer is, I don't quite know. And I don't necessarily know where it came from. And then it is just an aberration because that chapter for me too was just so amazing. In my mind, I realized when I just picked up that book today, the Modern Primitives book, in my mind, the picture of Fakir Musafar was on the front page. But then when I realized that it wasn't, but I couldn't remember how the book looked, because it sort of is just embodied by that first chapter about him. But that must have somehow given you making you feel like you weren't just a weirdo, but that this was something that was shared with other people.
Yeah, well, still kind of felt like a weirdo, but then at least I had some kind of reasoning, you know.
Yeah, and that there are other weirdos similar to
like,
you in a way. Yeah.
Why are you doing all of this? Yeah, because I am a fakir. It's part of my practice. But still, I couldn't just turn around and claim that title. I suppose like Fakir Musafar took Fakir as a name. That's a whole nother discussion, though. For me, it was like a title, like you're a professor or a doctor, or whatever, engineer, architect, fakir. That's that's my profession, and I wanted to make it a profession. And then it was like, okay, I need to. So I went to Brazil for a year. My grandfather died, and I got into some money, and I wasn't like. I was 20 years old with no direction in life. My only background up to then was like being a radical punk anarchist with believing that direct action was a way to change the world. So long story short, for several different reasons, well, I went to Brazil for a year. I was going to hook up with like a theatrical circus group there, and hoping that within that crew I could develop my interest or my practice as a fakir and put it into show context. Unfortunately, that group dissolved just after my arrival for some internal issues. So that that job opportunity didn't happen. But I was traveling around in Brazil, kind of like I was traveling around Brazil, I think, for 7 months before I bought myself a map to see where I'd been and where I was going. I was kind of happy-go-lucky, meeting someone, and could you come visit this place? And I went that place. But I had a lot of time for myself, and I had my kit of, scalpels and a variety of needles and some sutures and different stuff that I could, so I could suture some small padlocks onto my chest because I've seen Fakir in that book with some stuff, and wear them for a couple of days and see if I could get into some kind of altered state. So I had a lot of time to myself to explore this, and if I met someone and they were like, what the fuck are you doing? I would just like, I'm a fakir. So this is just a practice to explore pain and boundaries and thresholds of tolerance. And as it were, I started dating a girl, which later became the mother of my children. And she found it very intriguing and curious. And whenever I was at her house and there was friends over, she's like, yeah, Håvve, show them this and show them that. I think one of the first things I did to impress her was eating an egg with the shell on, which isn't really stunt or anything, but it was like, what? You eat eggshells? Like, wow. And I'd like push the needle through my arm and put some kind of contraption on so people could like lift the weight of my arm, from the skin. So it was like a prelude to suspensions.
Yeah.
Because when I saw that picture of Fakir hanging from that tree from his chest, I was like, okay, this is the goal of my exploration. One day that will be me hanging there. Yeah, this girl Monica, she was part of a group. They were organizing some shows locally, art exhibitions, concerts, stuff like this. So, and then they had an edition which was like kind of occult themed, and they was like, wouldn't you like to perform at this event? And that was my debut.
And which year was that?
91.
91. Wow.
And prior to this event, I tried to kind of make some kind of a repertoire. And then we gathered some friends. We went out to some ruins behind the university, like modern ruins from a building that was never finished. And I was sitting there and I tried to like put some makeup, some shitty makeup. And there was like a group of friends watching me hanging mag lights and odd objects from my piercings and showing some needles through my face and through my arm, and that was pretty much it. And they were like, "Oh, wow!" But they came to see this because they were particularly interested in like, what is Monica's new boyfriend into, and you know, and we had like a group talk chat after, and people could ask questions and passed all the stuff that I had hanging from my piercings around so people could feel the weight, and I felt really confident. And on the day of the show, so there was a band playing, there were a couple of bands playing, and in the foyer, the entrance area where the bar was and stuff, I was sitting on a little podium, you know, and doing my thing. People were disgusted.
Really?
There was probably up to 200 people present when I started. Within 10 minutes, there was maybe a couple of handfuls of people still there.
Oh,
Everyone
wow.
helped to get seats in for the actual show that they came to see, and they shouted so many ugly things at me.
Oh, wow.
And I was absolutely devastated.
And what do you think are the reasons for that? I mean, obviously, when it is an extreme expression, and that went well the first time, but maybe they were warned of it. So the second time around, what was it that went wrong? What was the communication there?
Now, mainly because seeing someone stick needles in themselves and bleed, it isn't for everyone. You know,
it isn't for everyone. Yeah. Hang on, we have I got you frozen now.
That's not what they think.
Hang on, there you go. Oh no, it's not working. Are you there now?
I'm here.
There, good. It was just all robot voice there. Sorry. So yeah,
so people weren't prepared for it. That was not what they came there for that night, and they found it disgusting. And as a performance, it wasn't really much to look at. I will. Oh,
just froze again. Don't know what's going on with the internet.
No performing skills, no performing experience, and I guess the big lesson I took from that night, my debut, which was a total failure, was that if I'm going to put my special interest on stage to entertain an audience, I need to get some stage vocabulary. So when I came back to Norway, or actually, I started practicing juggling, you know, and other like fire eating, fire breathing. When I came back to Norway, I I started this juggling club.
I know, yeah. Balls in the air. Yeah.
And I took some acting classes, and I took some clowning classes, some mime classes, stuff to give me some kind of stage presence where I could create a stage character, not just take my shirt off and put some mascara on and think that now I'm a performer and now people's going to be thrilled to see me hurt myself.
Yeah.
And then in 93, a couple of years later, juggling became kind of too technical and difficult to make into a practice as such. I was more interested in the fire stuff. So, and then adding fire club swing and fire eating, fire breathing and then like walking on broken glass and a bed of nails and then some pincushion stuff. Then there was more of a show. But in the early years, I was not much into comedy.
Yeah.
Very serious about my practice and making like very dark and heavy ritualistic performances.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I remember when, so I organized the juggling festival, and that was in 1996. And before that, though, like my first time when I actually met you, I mean, I met Siv, and Siv knew you. And so I heard about you, and we went to Oslo and met you juggling. But I think the first time when I actually met you that I can remember was that I wanted to have my nipples pierced, didn't know how to go about it. And at that time, and I don't know if this was maybe 1994 or 1993, I don't quite know. Maybe it was 1993, but anyway, there was no piercing studio in Oslo, which probably meant that there was no piercing studio in Norway at the time. And someone said you should contact Håvve, and I got your phone number and just told you from a phone booth, and then came to your house and you pierced my nipples.
Yeah, I boiled some needles and pierced your nipples.
Yeah,
no, there was no piercing on offer at the time. There was probably a few more people at the time that would pierce themselves and friends and family, so to speak. But I also opened the circle to if people was recommended to come to me for piercings, I would help them out as I did you.
Yeah.
Of course, the standards then was not very good.
No, I mean, but it was very much a self-exploration kind of thing. And I didn't even think of those things. Just coming to you and the fact that you had actual hypodermic needles sort of went, oh gosh, this is like the real deal. Just the fact that you had that, then as far as I remember, you had gloves on. You're already it's like poking through whatever jewelry. I can't remember what kind of jewelry it was, but I'm assuming it was just silver jewelry from a store. I can't remember that we had or didn't know how to get the kind of piercing jewelry in that early 90s.
No, I had a jewelry smith custom make some silver rings for me to my specifications.
Yeah,
that they fit in the hollow of the hypodermic needle, and they would have a different closing mechanism than the classic earrings. It'd be more suitable.
Yeah, more smooth area.
Yeah,
not that tiny little clasp where when your nipple expands that it get caught in the clasp kind of. But it's like it's that vaguely rings a bell of how it looked. I had a little. Like a tube on the outside, so you just stuck it in. It was like silver circle with a little tube that was big enough for it to go back into itself. So it was mainly smooth segment. Huh.
Yeah. So I had those custom made for me, so to facilitate for your nipples. among other body parts in people. Looking back at it, it was like horrible. But to my knowledge at the time, it was top notch.
It was, and it was like, but there's something about that as well, where we couldn't Google anything. So it was literally like, okay, I'm interested in this. And I had also read the Modern Primitives book. And one of the things that struck me, of course, it's the picture of a Musafar hanging in a tree in a kind of, is it a suicide or reverse suicide suspension? I don't know what it's called. But anyway, it's an epic image, but also because in terms of body modification, it's not just that you got a tattoo, which is somebody puts it on you and then it's there, but the nipples that he had, how he had literally grown them into, like it was kind of become an organ or a part of the body that don't actually exist anymore. I found that incredibly fascinating.
Yeah, and I was also intrigued by this, like stretching piercings and enlarging holes, permanent holes, exploring this. So yeah, I did pierce for a few years, and the more I did pierce others than myself, the more people came to me asking for, piercings. So it was kind of, and I had a thing for, I had experienced piercing skin, and I'd done pretty much all my own piercings.
Yeah, I mean it's.
But yeah, so at some point there was like I had to make the choice where I would I follow a piercing career and like invest my time and skill in becoming a professional piercer, or would I put all my eggs in the other basket and be a performer.
I had a similar thing as well. Me and Helgi Husebø had Solid Tattoo in Stavanger. Before that existed, we were doing it here and pierced each other and practiced and did more and more and went to Stavanger and worked at someone else's studio. But the reality of that, similar to yours, was that my main thing and what was doing shows. So I kept going away and doing a tour or whatever, and then coming back. And meanwhile, my friend was just escalating and learning more and more about the actual repercussions of what happens when stuff don't work out right, or when with the cross contamination and all this sort of stuff, because you're basically doing a form of surgery to some extent. So when you look back at what we were doing in the back of a bus at a festival, it was pretty low tech.
Yeah, pretty shameful in retrospect.
Pretty shameful, but it was also there wasn't anywhere else that you could do it. So you were it felt to me like you were in uncharted territory too. And you go, well, actually, I have done 80 piercings now or whatever. It's like I have set. So you want a piercing in your nose like that? I'm going, yeah, I've already done 30 of those, and no one has called me and said something went bad or whatever. But of course, it's all just stabbing in the dark because I had no knowledge of it. So it's like it was done with this naivete, which maybe nowadays is harder to have because you can Google everything. At that time, like you say, this one book, the Primitives book, and I found that book too. And when there was these limited sources, I read in this book that there was the PFIQ, the piecing, whatever it is, the where Musafar published articles and stuff. So then I managed to get a hold of some of those, but it really was like, it was so difficult to find information about these things. So in the same that I called and I get a phone number and I call you and go on, hey, it's me. And I think we met when we juggled at the Torshavparken or wherever it was that we were, Køyen or wherever we had juggled. And those are my credentials, and I do this sort of stuff. Can you pierce my nipples and organize a date and work out where the hell that how to find that address? Back then it was even that was tricky. And nowadays you Google this stuff and you just go, okay, there is so much that can go wrong. So you should, yeah. So that's my what I tell myself, to get the shame to go away with the things you did and charged money for.
Yeah, it was kind of pioneering, at least here. I think most people at the time that did piercings only pierced themselves, or maybe a couple of friends.
Yeah.
And I was lined up to open like the first official studio in Oslo.
Right.
But it's a different story.
Yeah. And anyway, it was like, whatever it was, the performance community was blessed by that not becoming your main path as well. Because anyway, somewhere around here, like in these early 90s, you had probably started Pain Solution. I can't remember which year it was, but it was 93 and 94.
Yeah.
But you started that in 93, so.
Yeah, we were already a couple of friends that was performing. Like, I remember Eirik, Robert, and me. We would meet every now and then, and like tattoo ourselves and each other and pierce, and that's a little club thing. I don't know. It wasn't very formal. It was we would just be happy. We were all interested in the same thing, and making tattoo needles and very, very bad standards. But yeah, we were into that, and I was like, guys, let's go outside, play with some fire. Let's I know how to breathe fire, kind of, and we were doing it out here in the backyard, and I was like, yeah, guys, let's make a show, like something really like hardcore, some very, with needles and fire and pain, and and they were like, yeah. And I was kind of pushing for this, and on occasion we would be asked to do some fire for a gig, or do some entertainment at the festival. We'd get some beers and a free ride, or whatever. It was, maybe once in a while there was a little money involved. And so we started doing this, and the more we did, the more requests we got. And I think I was the only one of the three of us who like started having visions of this becoming something more. This becoming, the main job. And at some point, this was in '93. Yeah, and also we for a while there was a band, Nemlig Hemmelig, which later became Superskill. They would often bring us along for stage shows. They did massive stage shows, and we would do fire, and I would occasionally have my padlocks on my chest and add some broken glass or clothes pins, or whatever stuff that I could fit in. And they would get all the publicity, and there would be pictures of us with them in the reviews and the papers, but we were never mentioned because we didn't have a name. And then I was like, guys, like, we shouldn't be like giving our skill away for a 6-pack of beer to some band that gets all the credit. We should have a band playing for us, and we should put on the show, and we should have the musicians backing us, not the other way around. So we started recruiting musicians, and the first lineup of Pain Solution was like 5 musicians and 2 performers. We had a didgeridoo player, we had a conga drum player, we had a guitarist, bass player, and another drummer for like a battery. And we were rehearsing. Of course, the guitarist, he wanted to make a successful rock band and a rock and roll career. and have us as the background. And so there was conflicts from the get-go.
Everyone wanted to be the star, but I, of course, I love this, to go, screw us being in the being visual candy for the band. We want the band, like in a circus, the band is sort of sitting in the back there, and then we got the focus on what we're doing. I love that.
Right. Yeah. And then I got a call from there was this youth program on TV called U.
Oh yeah.
They had this live edition, and Björk was there on set playing one of her new songs at the time. And we were doing this show. And then prior to this, I was called in everyone for a meeting, at the pub. Let's have some beers, and we need to brainstorm. We need to find a name, because we're going to be on TV. There has to be a name.
Yeah.
On TV when we are performing, so people know who to ask for if they want to book us for the have this show on their event.
There too, it's got this beautiful naivete of like, all right, everyone's looking at us and they're going like, who are you? And it's like, we don't know. We're just you're just identifying with what you do, and you're like, oh, can't even name it. That's so interesting. So so how did you come up with?
No, yeah. So we met at this bar, and of course we were all pretty broke back then. And I was like, so beers were on me, and everyone else besides me and Robert was more interested in drinking beer and looking at girls, or talking about football or whatever. And me and Robert, we were the actual two that were brainstorming, because we were the two performers. So
and the band was in the back going like, I'm the guitarist with Mystique. I'm in this group. What are you called? Let's see what they come up with.
Yeah. No, so we were brainstorming, and I was taking notes. And there was in the end there was like two names, and I'm really angry at myself that I can't remember what the runner-up was, because that was also a pretty good name. So it was
two names, and you only remember the one you chose, but it was really close.
Yeah. And then Pain Solution was my favorite, and Robert finally agreed under the condition that we would add incorporated, so it was Pain Solution Inc. And we would spell it with K.
Yeah, right.
For the tattoos, and very subtle.
Yeah.
Link there.
It's interesting. It also somehow, if it's called incorporated, also it seems like it's a bigger deal. It's like Pain Solution Norway, Pain Solution International, Pain Solution Galactic. It just, if it's called Pain Solution International, then it just sounds like it's a big deal. So if it's somehow incorporated, it's up that ladder as well. It's like, it's not just like a regular Pain Solution. This is put into a system.
For the first few years, it was Pain Solution Incorporated, and then eventually I changed it to just Pain Solution. And in this formation with the musicians and the band and everything, we did that one gig on live TV. Then we split up.
Yeah, right.
And the didgeridoo player, he stuck around. He wanted to still play the didge with us, and also eventually he wanted to learn to do the fire and the percussion and other acts. So he became part of the constellation of Pain Solution. And so it was me, Robert, and Bård.
Yeah.
For a while.
Yeah, because that's something we also have in common, of being in groups. And when you're self-organized groups or whatever, it's really hard to keep these people together and to have the same idea. Because, of course, one of the things that I was reading to get before talking to you is your first book, 10 Years of Pain. Is that still available?
Yeah, it is. Yes, it is. The only problem with that book is that the glue has become so brittle that the books tend to fall apart. Yeah.
As I just show, yeah, there's some of the pages are loose, so you got to hold on to it clearly so that it doesn't they crack loose.
I know some people have like stitched the back of it, and I've been looking into ways of having them stapled or stitched, but then again, it's like, this is so much in the past. But yeah, so it's still available and it's dead cheap. And if you buy the other books, you'll get that one for free.
Excellent. We'll post some links to that, because I have at least 2 of your other books there as well: To Bleed or Not to Bleed and Wings of Desire, Learning to Fly, from 2002 to 2012. So those are the 3 books of yours that I have, which is of course a super interesting thing that you got your books. But anyway, from here, it's like some of these stories that you tell, I have heard either hear you talk about it before, or like they're in these books. And I mean, I'm jumping now, but just because we started talking about the books, because one awesome thing about you and the books that you've published is that your sister is a kick-ass photographer.
Yeah. Yeah, so very early on, and I think she was also in the start of her career as a photographer. She came to as many shows as she could to document, which was very valuable. And then I don't know when I started thinking of it, but it's like, hey, 10-year anniversary is coming up. We should make a book for this. Yeah. And it was, of course, a privilege to have one photographer with an extensive archive of photographs to choose from, instead of, working with a lot of people. And the whole publishing branch, PS Media, up until a few years ago, I had great ambitions with more publications in the area of course, documenting my own work, but also other. We over the years had so many guesting side shows in Oslo that we have produced and put on, with also loads of great photos from different acts that that could be a photo book in itself with some anecdotes and short texts. Yeah, and then I think I had 5 or 6 other titles on the rooster for future publications. But then after the latest book that came out in 2017, or I think 17 or 18, when I published Stellark's book.
Stellark, yeah.
Skin. So that was the first and to date only book that we made that isn't about my work, and that turned out to be a different ball game, and it was hard to get that completed and published. And after this, I was like, fuck this publishing thing.
Yeah.
But now I occasionally publish a fanzine called Sagblad.
Oh, excellent.
Which is short texts and not just mine, and which is linked to my current work with the garden, and I guess that's something we can come back to in a later chapter.
Yeah. So we have basically arrived at the sorry.
I was just skipping very fast forward here.
Oh yeah, I know. And that's of course because I brought up the book, but there's even, as far as I remember anyway, there was a big gap between the first book and the next books that you published anyway there. So this was just to kind of go, this is what we're talking about here. So if you want to hear some more stories and see pictures of the different people and the different iterations, it is available, and we'll post the link in the thing. And it's well worth, if you want to know the kind of a huge part of the story of what went on with sideshow in Norway. I'm sure that everybody who was doing anything in some way was caught in the periphery of Pain Solution. I mean, so enough about those books, because we're ending up in we're still in the time of, which must be now like late 90s or something, or is it mid 90s still when you guys went on the TV show?
Yeah. So after that, we got rid of the musicians, which was really good, and carried on doing our shows on and it was kind of random when we got asked, and we tried. Well, I tried to like have regular practice, that we'd get together and rehearse stuff. But it was a thing with Pain Solution, I think, for the longest time, up until when I started working with Paolucci, was to get the others to share my ambition and my vision. And like, of course, as a Fakir and performer in that genre, I wanted to be among the best internationally in my genre. That was my goal. So very, very high ambitions. And the others, like, they did it more for fun. And and I was like, but if we're going to be great at it, we need to practice. Why do we need to practice? We'll just do it on the go, and get a gig, I'll show up and just improvise. And it would always work, because people were accustomed to see fire shows or and then with the added broken glass and beds of nails and needles going through skin, it was mind-blowing. And of course, some people would like it and some people would hate it, and so it went. And then constellations would shift. For many periods I was solo, which was sometimes also a relief, because then I didn't have to argue with anyone about but then, of course, also when there's two or more people, it also increases possibilities of what you can achieve.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that's interesting with any kind of freak show stuff, it is that the power of the skill itself, or the material that you do, it has a very strong ability to arrest people's attention. So when people around you go, oh, we don't need to rehearse, because by the time I put this thing through my skin, then people are going crazy anyway. And I think that's where a lot of people who get into doing sideshow or doing these kinds of shows, they never get past that level where you're relying on the inherent shock factor or the inherent violent beauty of blood dripping or whatever it is that you have as your expression, and you don't get past it by crafting the experience beyond the fact that it just is a full-on image. And that's what comes through rehearsal and through seeing you develop over time, is basically that lesson you had taught that first time when you did the show in the ruins, and people were going crazy and wanted to know more, and the other time they just go shut off and go, this is not for me. And there's something like the journey to you guys doing your shows when the show is so intriguing and people are coming to you. That's also what was so interesting about Pain Solution. And I think that, and you are the motor behind that at that early time you were going, I want to be the best in doing what it is that I do, even if we had a hard time working out who the heck in the world are doing that kind of stuff and what are they doing. It was like, this was YouTube didn't come until 2005, so this is like
It was. I remember early on, it was really hard to find inspiration and information because I went to the library searching for books about fakirs, and then you find that fakir, sadhu, dervish, yogi, asket.
Yeah. You
Just
find the
refer.
guys who stand with their arm in the air for a year or stuff like that.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like
yeah.
this is, and you go, haven't got
There's a
time for that.
it's not this. I don't want to tie my dick up in a knot and work with my hand level for the rest of my what's the entertainment value in that?
Yeah, it's like watching paint grow. I will stand here until my arm gets skinny. It's like, okay, we got other stuff to do, and watch this.
So, so it was really hard because also of course I would always search for so what else can I do that might be entertaining and painful and interesting for me to exercise, which is not just stitching padlocks onto my body or what other looking for inspiration. So it took some time. And I think it was in '95. I was back in Brazil, and I was taking acting classes at the Department of Scenic Arts at the university, which I managed to enter through some back door because I knew someone that had a position there. So in these acting classes, because I wanted to further develop my scenic vocabulary as the acting character doing whatever I do, but the character work I kind of found early on that's important to create the persona, which is an alter ego, not just you. And in this, I remember it was in some improv classes, and we were having some contact improv exercises, and I was paired up with Palucci, tall, skinny, black dude. So we had similar body build, but opposite color scheme, which made for an interesting visual. And we worked well in the improv in the class, and I remember the teacher, Hugo Hodas, is now deceased. He was like, he came up to us after the exercise and said, you two, you should work more together. And Palucci was super intrigued with my practice with paint solution and wanted to learn the fire and wanted to try, the somersaults in broken glass and all that. So we started doing some performance work together, exploring this material.
In Brazil.
In Brazil, but more in a physical theater abstract world, and we would kind of have some very loose storyline that you have to know to grasp it, but interesting visuals and lots of broken glass, and we different ways. How can we, what if we fill a sack of broken glass and suspend it over our heads and then poke a hole in it and have a shower of broken glass? That'd be fucking cool. So exporting these and then putting that into some symbolic language. So then for a few years we were doing physical theater, adding all this stuff, the broken glass, the needles, the fire, and then we would have a ball of fire, and for some reason we would crawl our way up to this ball and start feeding off the fire, picking up fire with our hands and putting it in our mouths and eating fire that way, which was I think, avant-garde way of eating fire.
Yeah.
Classic and challenging, and we would get so many cuts and bruises and burns from our performances. And also I had a theater at the time, so we had a place to rehearse and work and develop these performances. We even shot a movie, or a short movie, in Brazil, very abstract, called Eleuteria, about these two guys who find themselves chained to a pillar in this this garage building that was like falling down, completely in ruins. And then there's a string of fire starting to chase them around, and as they break loose from this pillar, they discover that on the other end of the chain is another man. With this chain around our necks. Then we had
this is ringing a bell.
And with fighting each other to get free, and then also fighting or cooperating to escape the fire. And like, we had people throwing Molotov cocktails at us, and I had to instruct them, like, you try to hit us. That's your mission. That's your task. Try to hit us. Our task is to dodge the bottles. That movie was never it's never been edited, and I've seen the raw footage once, and it's a shame. Really, it's some interesting stuff in there. Anyway, so
because this specific thing, I remember you guys did that when I had that juggling festival in Haugesund in 1996. Then you guys did a later version. So this couple of years after, or whatever. Did you say 94 or 95 that you guys were doing this?
Yeah. So so that was the and then on occasion we would be hired to do some fire at the rave or at some party, or and that was the money gigs. And then we would promote our shows in the theater, and for a while we attracted an audience, but like also very small audience that would follow our very niche. And at some point it's like, we spend more money producing these shows than we make on ticket sales, and this is not sustainable. And if we're not looking to go out and get a job, we need to create something which is more easily marketed, something we can sell as entertainment to Christmas party, summer party, the anniversaries, weddings, you name it, something that is like we can easily carry in some boxes and pack out and put on and pack up and leave.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, where we turned towards sideshow format.
And how the transition from symbolic, primitive Fakir performances, very powerful stuff, into the format of the sideshow, and his new ideas that would come from not accepting fully the American version of the sideshow. And Norway doesn't have a sideshow tradition in that strong American way. So there's some really interesting stuff there. And then also next episode, we will he talks a little bit about how he got a few people in to work for him as pupils in what became the Fakir school, which is a really interesting story of people in difficult situations that could find their way, or hopefully, and his work with young people in Norway. Very, very interesting stuff, and we're going to dig deep on that in the next exciting episode of The Way of the Showman. So, until then, take care of yourself and those you love, and I hope to see you along the way.